All right. So today, I just want to do a quick look at how you can work with Dojo routing inside your applications. The guide pages on Dojo.io actually are really good for routing. They show you all the different configurations and the options you can do. I mean, the main things you're concerned about when you're defining your routing is going to be defining the actual routes themselves, right? Which is something like that they show in the documentation here. Make that a little bigger. All right, so for example, you have to have an ID, what the path is going to be for the route, and what the outlet will be. If you have a default route, like home, or maybe just / as a default, you can always set that as well. And then you can have children routes, right, which can also be pretty interesting stuff you can work with. So like I said, the documentation here is really good. You can have routing down to like I said, the children routes and stuff, right? And I think even once you get into here, they could have children of children if you need to get that nested for your routing. I typically don't. I don't think I even use children in most of the stuff that I've done, but it is available, which is nice. And the great thing is when you do the build time rendering, it's going to create all these pages for you, which is really cool, especially if you have a static site, which is nice. All right, so okay, so let's look at some of the things you can do. So again, if I look at my app here, so this is the default app you get with the Dojo CLI. And I think we've talked about this before. You get the basic routes in here. So the home is going to be the default route. And we have an outlets here. And each of these routes with the paths is going to be a widget. So if we look at over here, we've got an about widget, home widget, and a profile. Matches in here, home, about, profile, and that's pretty self-explanatory there. To set up the routes, you have to have like a main TSX widget, which would be in my case the app widget, right? If you want to call it that, or an entry point. You just need an entry point for the page. In the case of the app you get with the Dojo CLI, it is essentially a widget. So we have this app here, and you define routes by using the outlet component that you can use here. So the outlet, again, remember we defined the routes, what outlet's going to be. So outlet's going to be main. So we've got that over here. Get myself lost. So we have an ID of main for this one, and then we have all the different routes you could use here. Which, like I said, that's pretty nice, pretty straightforward. There's other things you can do with the routes that I'll talk about later on. We can do match some values being passed to the route and so on, which is kind of cool. Let me fix this URL here. I want to show you something else in a second. Okay, so we've got that. But let's say, so when you think of routing, a lot of times you think of routing as being you're just going from one page to the next, which is true, right? You're clicking the URL changes, and you go to a different page. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are locked into showing a new page every time. It could be just part of the page, which, if you look at the app, is really what we're doing, right? We have a menu. The menu stays consistent throughout the use of our page, and all we're doing is changing what the content under this menu is going to be, right? So we're bringing in different widgets in here and so on. So what we can do is I'm going to play with this a little bit. I'm going to copy this. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to add a div. And this div is going to have some CSS assigned to it. It's going to be a footer. All right. Now, come on. So I'm getting all these errors here because you can't return back multiple elements here. It has to be a single element. And in Dojo, the way you do that is with a virtual element you can put in here. It's a virtual VDOM. You can wrap everything in. Kind of like a fragment, right? Pretty much what you're doing here. Okay, so I've wrapped all that up. Save it, refresh it, and I have my footer down here, which just has a yellow background color. So what I can do is I can go ahead and say, all right, I want to have an outlet down here as well. So I'll do outlet in here. And this outlet is going to go ahead and I'm going to show the profile widget down here. Now I'm also going to show it up top. I don't care. We'll do what I want to do. It's my app, right? So let me just refresh it again here. Go about, go to profile. There you go. I've got the profile widget showing up over here and the profile widget showing up down here. I'm going to remove it here if I don't want it here. Refresh it, and there you go. Just my profile widget shows up in my footer at that point. All right, so I can have a special widget down here to do some things that would be done via the router, which is nice. Like I said, you can now use, well, not now, but you could always define just portions of your page that are going to be tied to the route that you're using, right? Which is really nice, and that's a cool feature you can do. That means that you could have some main content over here, maybe a sidebar over here, so that when you are going to a route that says /users, you now have a list of users over here, and maybe you have details for a particular user here, which is pretty nice. That's kind of a cool thing you can pull off. Yeah, like I said, you have a lot of flexibility in how you can use this. One other thing I wanted to show real quick on this one, but I'll do some more videos later on going into detail on how to do some cool stuff with the routes and passing properties and stuff in the routes, URL parameters and things like that. But another thing you can do is you can actually change the URL here, right? So instead of using the slash, you can actually get rid of it so that it's going to look like, like that, which right now isn't going to work. All right, it just does that for me. So we need to have some history for the routing that's going to be used, a history manager. So we can import that from Dojo, and I believe it's going to be state history. And actually, before I do that, because I can't remember exactly, I believe that's what it's called, but don't quote me on that. I'll bring it from Dojo framework. This is for routing, so it should be in routing. History, state history, here we go. All right, and I think I just need to do it like this. Bam, there we go. And then the register route injector takes a third argument, which will be a, what is this going to be? History manager. Ah, there it goes. Look at that. TypeScript IntelliSense telling me what to do. Perfect. And state history. So now if I refresh that, we'll see the URL change here from, oh my gosh, I forget what it's called. Pound home to just slash home, slash about, slash profile. And there you go. This is really useful for building static sites because I believe the Dojo build time rendering will not create static pages for pound URLs. They have a, God damn it. There's a name for that, and it's slipping my tongue right now. I forget. But it will, for sure, be able to create static pages for these regular looking URLs like this, right? This will get generated for you for build time rendering. And you can even go ahead and, in this case here, well, maybe not all of this, because this definitely uses some JavaScript in here. If we look at this profile widget, there's some passing of usernames in here. Well, maybe, I don't know. I can't remember. Anyway, you can even do the build time rendering to help build your static site without any JavaScript at all. So it's completely static, no JavaScript gets loaded. Wicked fast, that's for sure. The learndojo.com site is built with this, and it is super fast. So that's one thing to consider as well if you want to determine how you want to use your history manager for routing when you're doing the build time rendering. That could have an impact as well. So yeah, that's it for this one. I'll cover more routing stuff in the future. Thank you.